This video starts off with our origin and scale set for this bird flying across the lake video. And what we're going to do now is lay down points. I'm going to start by going to the top up there and tapping points. So switching off of origin and scale and to points. Next, I'm going to grab that target or donut and move it to be over my bird, and using the slider that's to the left of the target, I'm going to get it to such that it's as close as possible to the size of the bird in the video. Then I tap my finger in the center of that target to drop a point. Did you see that little red dot show up? That was my point that was dropped, and it automatically advances the film or the video by 1 frame. Now what I'm going to do is, using those buttons at the bottom, move the video forward and backward until I can find it such that I have about 5 or 6 points where the bird is about on the x-axis. So I'm going to try to make it so that the origin, the x-axis of that I'd set in the previous video, so that my points lie as close as possible to all of those. So you can see I'm kind of moving back and forth in the video, kind of hunting for moments when the bird was at that height. To stay relatively consistent, because we want this to be a 1D motion. Okay, so we have 5 points now, and what I'm going to do is tap the graph in the upper right corner. It looks like a graph with a squiggly line, and that will pull up my graphs. That first one's not so interesting. It's y versus x, so I'm just going to swipe and head to the x graphs. All right, I'm going to just take a peek at the Y ones here by swiping, and those really aren't so interesting because it's the dimension we're not moving in. We're moving in the X dimension in this 1D motion video. So I'm going to go back to the X ones. All right, so you're going to want to screenshot this. You certainly would want to include this in your EPUB. And I'm going to note a few things. If we look at the top graph, that's displacement versus time. What do we notice about the slope? Is it positive or negative? Yeah, if you said negative, that's correct. It is a negative slope, and it is also fairly linear. So because it is a negative slope, we're going to say it has a negative velocity, and it's nearly linear, which means it's a constant velocity. So that graph really shows us a constant negative velocity. If we look at the bottom graph, which is velocity in the x direction versus time, we can see that the magnitude of that constant negative velocity is between -4 and -6.5. Of course, it's not going to be perfectly constant here because this is real world. And it's a bird flying, and so there is some variation in the speed. But notice those negative numbers. It's between -4 and -6.5. Additional justification or verification that we're looking at a constant negative velocity.